All men are pigs. No woman can ever be trusted. Everyone is just out for themselves. Let's talk about how to trust again after a breakup, because I've heard these things usually after somebody breaks up, and it's a pretty good indicator that they don't trust people. So let's talk about how do we fix that. First, I want to talk about some examples of things in my last relationship with my ex where I lost trust and why it was difficult for me to gain trust in people again afterwards. When my ex and I had first got together, I think it had been a year or two, maybe a year and a half, when we had been dating. Something happened. He had to move out of where he was living, and he didn't like where he was given the option to live, basically. So I decided, okay, you know what? We've been together for a while. Why don't we move in together? Why don't we see if we can make this work? I mean, we're comfortable with each other. Let's figure this out. And basically that's what we decided to do. So I have a very clear memory of the night before we were supposed to move in together, and we hadn't really discussed a lot of it, but I just figured, you know, I knew his friends were going to help us to move, and I figured, okay, well, we're all going to go and move everything together. That's kind of what you assume is going to happen. Now, there were other times that we moved together, and I don't remember those times that well, because really the day before you move is not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a big deal preparing, but that day, once it comes, it's not a big deal. So I remember I had slept over where my ex was living at the time on a mattress on the floor, and I said, like, I guess I was trying to prepare, and I was saying, okay, so I'm going to do this and you're going to do that, and like, this is the way we're going to do things, and how do you feel about that? And he basically dropped a bomb on me. He said, well, I'm going to be going to work in the morning. When he said this to me, I did not take it well. I freaked out and I got angry, and it wasn't even like I got angry for a long time, but basically, I felt like, what just happened? You're violating my trust here, because I trusted that we were doing this together, and there was no communication that it was going to be otherwise. And basically, the next day, I did a very long move, a very complicated move with his stuff, with no good instructions of what to do, and I was very uncomfortable with the whole thing. So that's one example of losing trust. And there were times during the relationship, you know, where I was given the silent treatment, and we would go out to dinner, and then all of a sudden the silent treatment was lifted, and we were acting like everything was okay. That would be another time when I kind of lost trust in my partner, because it was one way at home and one way out in public, and it's hard to trust somebody that has different faces, which I went along with, so it's not like I didn't have that same problem. All right, but let's talk about like the obvious way that I lost trust in this relationship, and that would be because my ex had cheated on me more than once. But the first time that it happened, I felt like, can I trust my ex? Like, that's a big deal. That's a huge breach of trust. I had a hard time about that, and I've talked about it a little bit here already on my channel. So what I came to the conclusion was, it's hard to trust somebody who just cheated on you, but I was willing to try to trust, to try to figure out how to trust again if his actions changed, and he had agreed to go to therapy, and I was okay with that at the time. Now, ultimately, years later, he violated that trust again. That was devastating, and it was really hard to recover from that, but I was willing to keep trying. There was another time, though, where he broke my trust, where we had gotten into a very small, what I felt was a pretty insignificant fight. Even though I know it was a big fight, it was still kind of like over something stupid. A day or two before we were supposed to go on a vacation with a bunch of people, like a group of friends, and what happened was, the day of the vacation, we had to get up very early. I am not the type of person who likes to get up early at all, and so I usually would just wait for him to wake me up. While I woke up, he was gone and went on the vacation without me. So after all of these times when I felt like my trust was violated, and I felt basically like on the floor, like these were the worst moments of my life at this period in time, and I couldn't quite understand once we broke up, and even once again, he didn't care about how I felt or anything, and I had requested that he not date anybody while we were transitioning, while we were with a therapist, and he went ahead and started dating somebody anyway. I couldn't understand, like, how am I ever going to recover from this, and how am I ever going to have another relationship after this? I just kind of figured, if I get into another relationship, I'm just going to assume that they're doing all the same things. Like, I'm not going to be able to trust them. I'm going to feel like I need to look at their phone and get their passwords and know everything about what they're doing, because I'm not letting this happen to me again. Not only did I have a hard time understanding how I was going to have a relationship again, I wasn't even sure how I was going to trust friends or anybody, because after all that I had gone through and after all of the fakeness and the lies and the pretending and everything, I just felt like, how can you trust anyone? But I had to find a way, right? So what did I do? How did I trust again after a breakup? Well, quite honestly, that was not something that was easy to do in the first place, and it became apparent to me really quickly that if I was going to trust anybody, I had to learn to trust myself again. Really, the only thing I have to judge whether people are people that I can trust or not are my experiences, and I had a lot of crappy experiences to go by, but I also had to remember I had a lot of good experiences with people too, and good experiences in relationships. So what did I do? I had to learn what was it about this relationship and what was it about this person, what qualities or what patterns and behaviors were the ones that I didn't work with, that probably wouldn't work for anybody, but especially for me, were no good. So that took some time, and that took some digging through the patterns of what happened in the relationship and what it was that made it so I couldn't trust this person. You know, there was a lot that I was ignoring that now that the breakup happened, I had time to go through and pick apart and see what happened here. Even with all that information though, I still had to use that information, and I had to ultimately trust what I was feeling. So if I was with somebody and I saw the things happening in front of me, the patterns, I had to believe that what was happening was actually happening, and I had to have the confidence in myself to know this is not good. We already decided we can't do this. What that really means is that I had to build my self-esteem back up. You know, my self-esteem took a plummet during the breakup, and especially after all these violations of trust, and I was never going to trust anybody else until I had the trust in myself to know what I was feeling and to know what I like, what I don't like, what's good and what's not good for me. Part of the reason why I'm not in a relationship yet is because everybody that I've come across has shown me reasons why we shouldn't be in a relationship, and that doesn't mean that I can't trust people. I trust friends. I trust a lot of new people who come into my life, but I don't trust anybody with that intimate part of myself. I'm much more cautious now, and I'm much more aware of what I'm looking for. What do you think it would take for you to trust somebody now? Let me know down below in the comments.